Why is Burkina Faso's ex-president returning after exile? Is it safe for him? Will people welcome him or be angry? Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba, the former president currently exiled in Togo, may be extradited to Burkina Faso to face justice. But will he come back? Let's find out. Discussions between the governments of Togo and Burkina Faso are ongoing, according to Captain Ibrahim Traoré, Burkina Faso's current leader. Damiba, who rose to power in January 2022 through a military coup, was ousted in September of the same year, with allegations of corruption, betrayal, and failure to manage the country's security crisis under his leadership. His potential return has raised numerous questions about the future of Burkina Faso and the precedent it sets for African leaders who have used their positions of power for personal gain at the expense of their nations. But more importantly, this moment presents a pivotal decision for the Burkinabé people. Will they embrace a future of justice and accountability, or will they allow former leaders to escape the consequences of their actions? And how will the ongoing negotiations over Damiba's extradition affect Burkina Faso's diplomatic standing? Burkina Faso's current leadership, under Captain Ibrahim Traoré, is walking a diplomatic tightrope as they negotiate the possible extradition of Paul-Henri Damiba. On the surface, this may appear to be a straightforward legal issue, bringing a former leader back to face justice. But the reality is far more complex. The Togolese government, which has been providing refuge to Damiba since his ousting, finds itself in a delicate position. Togo's role in this tale will shape its relations not just with Burkina Faso, but with other nations in the economic community of West African states ECOWAS and the broader African continent. Critics of the extradition process argue that pursuing Damiba's return could destabilize the region, given his status as a former head of state. They claim that such an action might provoke unrest among his remaining supporters or trigger a political backlash. But let's ask the hard question: should a former leader's political connections and diplomatic sensitivities be enough to shield them from facing justice? The truth is that sim justice estis should not bow to diplomacy. If Damiba is guilty of the crimes he's been accused of, there is no reason why he should be granted special treatment simply because of his previous title. Pursuing Damiba's extradition could strengthen Burkina Faso's diplomatic credibility on the international stage. By insisting on holding a former president accountable, Traoré's government is sending a clear message: no one is above the law. This is particularly important in a region where political impunity has long been the norm. Leaders have come and gone, often escaping accountability by fleeing to friendly nations. But Burkina Faso's insistence on extraditing Damiba could set a new precedent for West Africa. Moreover, the diplomatic negotiations between Burkina Faso and Togo are not just about extradition. They are about shaping future relations within the region. Both countries are part of ECOWAS, an organization tasked with promoting economic integration and stability across West Africa. How these negotiations unfold will be closely watched by other ECOWAS members, as it touches on deeper issues of regional justice and cooperation. Damiba's extradition also has implications for future governance in Burkina Faso. By bringing him back to face trial, Traoré is asserting his government's commitment to justice and accountability, distinguishing himself from previous leaders who may have turned a blind eye to corruption and betrayal. The government's willingness to confront this issue head-on shows that they are serious about reforming governance and restoring public trust in their institutions. At its core, the decision to pursue Damiba's extradition reflects Burkina Faso's broader attempt to redefine its place in the region and the world. In the past, African leaders were often seen as untouchable, shielded by diplomatic alliances and political power. But Traoré's government is rewriting that narrative, challenging the notion that diplomatic sensitivities should protect those accused of betraying their people. As the extradition process unfolds, it's important to understand why Damiba's leadership failed and how it led to his downfall. How did his rise to power, which began with such promise, become a disaster? Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. When Paul-Henri Damiba seized power in January 2022, he did so because of public frustration with Roch Marc Christian Kabore's administration. The previous government had been widely criticized for its inability to contain the growing jihadist insurgency that was wreaking havoc across large parts of Burkina Faso. At the time, many saw Damiba as a necessary force, a military leader who could restore order and address the security crisis that was threatening to tear the country apart. Damiba's early rhetoric was filled with promises of swift action and decisive leadership. He vowed to bring peace to a country that had been plagued by extremist violence, and he positioned himself as the man who could fix what Traoré could not. But as we now know, those promises quickly fell apart. In the first 6 months of Damiba's rule, the situation on the ground worsened. Over 530 security incidents were recorded, resulting in nearly 2,000 deaths. How can anyone claim that Damiba's leadership was successful when the facts paint such a grim picture? Some of Damiba's supporters have argued that he inherited an impossible situation. They point to the complexity of the jihadist insurgency, claiming that no leader could have solved the problem in such a short time. But let's not forget that Damiba himself justified his coup because he could do better than Traoré. The fact that he failed so dramatically only underscores the hollowness of his promises. If anything, his leadership exacerbated the crisis, leaving the country more vulnerable to extremist violence than ever before. Damiba's inability to deliver on his security promises was compounded by his economic failures. Under his leadership, Burkina Faso's economy suffered. Inflation soared, unemployment rose, and public dissatisfaction reached an all-time high. Damiba's government failed to implement meaningful economic reforms, and the country's infrastructure continued to deteriorate. The Burkinabé people, who had placed their hopes in him, felt betrayed. But perhaps the most significant factor in Damiba's downfall was his inability to maintain public trust. The coup that brought him to power was justified by the promise of immediate action to address the security crisis. When that action failed to materialize, Damiba's support base crumbled. Public protests grew louder, and by September 2022, he was overthrown by Captain Ibrahim Traoré, a man who has since positioned himself as the true champion of the Burkinabé people. Damiba's promises of security and stability were nothing more than empty rhetoric, designed to gain power but ultimately failing to deliver. His inability to manage the jihadist threat and his economic mismanagement led to his rapid downfall. Traoré's government, in contrast, has taken decisive steps to address these issues, showing that real leadership is about action, not words. While Damiba's failure as a leader is clear, there is another factor that contributed to his downfall: his close ties to France. What role did foreign influence play in his political demise? One of the most significant and controversial aspects of Paul-Henri Damiba's leadership was his close relationship with France, a relationship that many Burkinabé saw as a betrayal of national interests. France's historical involvement in West Africa has always been fraught with tension, and its presence in Burkina Faso has been viewed with increasing skepticism, especially in recent years. The idea of a former colonial power continuing to exert influence over the country's political and economic affairs did not sit well with a population that was growing more and more disillusioned with Western interference. Damiba's willingness to engage with France and maintain close diplomatic ties with Paris raised red flags from the beginning. While he claimed that France's involvement was necessary for Burkina Faso's security, particularly in the fight against jihadist insurgents, many in the country saw it as an indication that Damiba was more interested in serving French interests than those of his people. This disillusionment was further fueled by the anti-French protests that erupted across Burkina Faso during Damiba's rule.
Faut qu'il quitte immédiatement. Nous ne voulons pas ambassadeur français au Burkina.
He needs to leave right away. We don't want a French ambassador such as Luc Halad. He's like Satan in Burkina. He's seen as a pyromaniac, a terrorist. We don't want him in Burkina.
Nous voulons pas cet ambassadeur. Il n'est pas autorité au Burkina.
Burkina Faso is tied with France. Burkina Faso wants to break our relations with France. That's why we're burning the French flags, because we want to show France we don't need her anymore.
Demonstrators took to the streets, accusing France of meddling in their country's affairs and demanding an end to its military presence. The protests outside the French embassy in Ouagadougou and the French Institute in Bobo-Dioulasso were not just expressions of anger towards France, they were expressions of anger towards Damiba, who many believed was too closely aligned with a foreign power that had long been seen as a neo-colonial force in West Africa. It's worth noting that Captain Ibrahim Traoré, who eventually ousted Damiba in September 2022, capitalized on this anti-French sentiment. Traoré accused France of harboring Damiba after his overthrow and of plotting to undermine the country's sovereignty. Whether or not these accusations were entirely accurate, they struck a chord with the Burkinabé people, who were increasingly distrustful of both Damiba and France's role in their country. Damiba's downfall, therefore, was not just a result of his failure to address the jihadist threat or his economic mismanagement. It was also about his failure to assert Burkina Faso's independence from foreign influence. The people wanted a leader who could restore national pride and sovereignty, not a man who seemed willing to play puppet to France. The lesson here is clear. In a country like Burkina Faso, where the scars of colonialism are still fresh, a leader's relationship with foreign powers is always going to be scrutinized. Damiba's decision to align himself with France, whether out of necessity or personal choice, was one of the key factors that led to his political demise. While Damiba's ties to France certainly contributed to his downfall, there's an even more troubling aspect to his leadership: his alleged collaboration with insurgent groups. How credible are these accusations, and what does it mean for his potential extradition? Perhaps the most damning accusation against Paul-Henri Damiba is that he allegedly collaborated with the very insurgent groups he had promised to defeat. According to intelligence gathered by Captain Ibrahim Traoré's government, Damiba was involved in several plots aimed at destabilizing Burkina Faso after his ousting, including collusion with groups. If proven true, these accusations represent not only a betrayal of the Burkinabé people, but also a complete repudiation of the promises Damiba made when he seized power in January 2022. In a recent interview, Traoré did not mince words when discussing Damiba's alleged involvement. His involvement in these destabilization projects has become evident, especially in the last project where he was linked to jihadists, Traoré said. These are not baseless claims. Intelligence reports have been cited, and the government has made it clear that they believe Damiba was actively working with jihadist elements to undermine the current administration. Critics of the government's position have suggested that these accusations are politically motivated, a convenient way to discredit Damiba and justify his potential extradition. But let's be clear, if the evidence exists, then Damiba must be held accountable. The Burkinabé people have a right to know whether their former leader was conspiring with the very groups responsible for the violence and chaos that has ravaged their country for years. The idea that a former president, who came to power promising to restore peace, could now be accused of working with jihadist groups is a shocking revelation. It raises profound questions about the nature of leadership in Burkina Faso and the extent to which foreign powers and extremist groups have influenced the country's political landscape. If these accusations are proven, it will mark one of the greatest betrayals in Burkina Faso's history. For Traoré's government, the accusations against Damiba are not just about settling political scores. They are about ensuring that justice is served. If Damiba's collaboration with jihadists is proven in court, it would not only vindicate the government's decision to oust him, but also demonstrate Burkina Faso's commitment to transparency and accountability. In a region where political impunity has often been the norm, holding a former leader accountable for such serious crimes would send a powerful message. No one is above the law. As the negotiations for Damiba's extradition continue, the accusations of jihadist collaboration will undoubtedly weigh heavily on the minds of those involved. For the Burkinabé people, these revelations are a reminder of the complex web of power struggles that have shaped their country's recent history, and the need for stronger, more transparent governance moving forward. As Burkina Faso moves forward under Captain Traoré's leadership, it is clear that the country is entering a new era of governance. So, what does the future hold for Burkina Faso, and how is Traoré reshaping the political landscape? Since taking power in September 2022, Captain Ibrahim Traoré has made it clear that his leadership represents a new chapter for Burkina Faso. In stark contrast to Damiba, Traoré has positioned himself as a leader who prioritizes accountability, transparency, and self-reliance. His government has taken bold steps to distance itself from foreign influence, particularly that of France, while focusing on domestic reforms that aim to rebuild public trust in the country's institutions. Traoré's leadership has drawn comparisons to Thomas Sankara, the revolutionary leader who governed Burkina Faso in the 1980s, and was known for his commitment to self-sufficiency and anti-imperialism. Like Sankara, Traoré has made moves to slash government salaries, boost civil servants' wages, and invest in key economic sectors such as agriculture and infrastructure. These actions have been widely praised by the Burkinabé people, many of whom see Traoré as a leader who is genuinely committed to improving their lives. But Traoré's government faces significant challenges. The jihadist insurgency that has plagued the country for years remains a serious threat, and political instability in neighboring countries like Mali and Niger continues to create ripple effects across the region. Traoré has emphasized the importance of regional cooperation in tackling these issues, calling for stronger ties between West African nations to address the root causes of instability, such as poverty, corruption, and foreign interference. One of the key aspects of Traoré's leadership has been his commitment to accountability. By pursuing the extradition and possible trial of Paul-Henri Damiba, Traoré is sending a clear message. Under his government, no leader will be allowed to escape justice. This stands in stark contrast to previous administrations, where corruption and political impunity were often tolerated. As Burkina Faso moves forward, it is clear that Traoré's leadership will play a crucial role in shaping the country's political landscape. His focus on self-reliance, regional cooperation, and accountability sets him apart from previous leaders, and his government's actions will have broader implications for the Sahel region as a whole. So, to sum this up, as the negotiations surrounding Paul-Henri Damiba's extradition continue, Burkina Faso stands at a pivotal moment in its history. Damiba's potential return to face trial represents more than just a legal proceeding. It symbolizes the country's commitment to justice, accountability, and transparency. Under Captain Ibrahim Traoré's leadership, Burkina Faso is undergoing a significant transformation. Traoré's focus on domestic reform, self-reliance, and regional cooperation offers a new vision for a country that has long been plagued by political instability and foreign interference. His government's pursuit of justice for Damiba's alleged crimes is a clear indication that the era of impunity is over. The lessons learned from Damiba's rise and fall will undoubtedly shape the future of Burkina Faso. Traoré's leadership offers a path forward, one that prioritizes national sovereignty, economic stability, and regional cooperation. Will Traoré succeed in restoring stability and rebuilding public trust? Or will the country continue to be plagued by the challenges of jihadist insurgency and foreign interference? Let us know in the comment section. Will justice be served? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.